State lawmakers continue discussing what might happen should they rein in local property tax hikes. And President Trump visits Fort Bragg and raises attention on the Whatley-Cooper Senate race. This is State Lines.
Funding for State Lines is made possible in part by
Across North Carolina, strong communities begin at home. The North Carolina Realtors represent more than 55,000 professionals statewide, focused on expanding housing attainability for all.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting PBS-NC.
Welcome back to State Lines. I'm Kelly McCullen. Joining me today, great analyst, good friend, Skye David of New Frame Incorporated is to my right. Representative Sarah Crawford, the Democrat from Wake County, joins us in Seat 2 with Senator Benton Sawrey, the Republican representing Johnston County in Seat 3. Colin Campbell of WUNC News in Seat 4. Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Kelly.
Good morning.
I gave you the cheat sheet. You can see what topics we're talking about. I hope you're ready to fill a half hour. Folks have high expectations of you.
We'll do our best.
We're ready.
Let's talk about
I made you nervous. All right, let's start with the State House Committee considering property tax reforms. They keep meeting and they continue discussions this week. One issue is becoming more and more clear to the committee is that federal funding changes to services like Medicaid and food stamps could push administrative costs onto the local government budgets, just as the state legislature would implement reforms on how to tax properties for local revenue. Critics are urging caution. Reform supporters say, hey, local government should offer high quality but very limited scope services before deciding to raise anyone's property taxes. That sets the tone, Colin. That's the way I heard it. It was like we could reform property taxes, but first let's hear about how much extra it's going to cost local governments to reform
let's hear how much
Medicaid.
the budgets are going to have to increase, and then we'll talk about try to cut down their property taxes that we already feel like are too high even before they take on all these federal
Why would
responsibilities.
Republicans who run any House committee like that, why would you start with how expensive it's going to be and then we'll get to the tax cuts for the governments that have to pay for it?
I feel like they're recognizing that that's the pressure they're going to get from local leaders at the county and local level. I mean, the issue with this federal thing is that you've got these new work requirements for things like food stamps and for Medicaid, and it's ultimately going to be up to people at the county level, your Department of Social Services, that actually implements that, figures out are people actually meeting these work requirements, do they qualify? And they probably have to hire more people, and that's going to cost money. And so at the same time, that's going to be a pressure they're going to get from the counties is we need the state to help us out. At the same time, the state is saying your property taxes are already too high. Don't look to us. Don't look to raising taxes as the solution to deal with this problem.
Yes, Senator Sawrey, it's nothing but the feds passing things to you. You're looking at the costs and going, well, the local governments have to step up in some areas. So just solve it all in this 1 minute or so that we have to discuss.
Yeah, so I think we're actually missing some of the issues with the changes from H.R. 1 and the property tax and the cost. So a lot of that money is actually paid for by state and federal sources that trickles down to the counties. It's not really county property tax dollars. And if the counties and local governments think that it's too much to bear, it's too much cost, I think it's a good opportunity to have a conversation about centralizing and regionalizing some of these services. I'll use Utah as an example. They have a Department of Workforce Solutions where they have regional hubs where you can have unemployment benefit discussions, SNAP benefit discussions, child care discussions, Medicaid discussions. And it really, I think, leans into the principle that sometimes we should look at these things, and I'm going to borrow Senator Bergen's term, a safety trampoline rather than a safety net, right? The goal for some of these programs should be to find a way to get you off of the social welfare programs, get you a job, find a private employer-sponsored insurance plans, get it where you don't need to rely on these government services to do so. So I think when we're having these conversations about costs at the county level with these changes from the federal government, let's take a look at how we do things.
Does the state legislature have to get in and reform that to allow regional hubs to consolidate what would be otherwise county-by-county services? I've not dived that deeply.
Yeah, sure.
into
We are a state-supervised, county-administered program. We have 100 different DSS offices in 100 counties. I think I heard a DSS director the other day say, when you've seen one DSS office, that's it. You've seen one DSS office and the way it operates and works. Yeah. The way it happens in Jones County is different than the way it happens in Johnston County, is different than the way it happens in Mecklenburg County. And each county has its own challenges with funding, staffing, resources, and expertise for these programs. we've been doing it for a long time this way. That doesn't mean it's the right way. So with these costs and with some of the increases with Medicaid and what's coming down from the federal level, I think we probably should take a fresh look at the way things we're doing across North Carolina.
Representative Crawford, I have noticed when this idea of property tax reform and doing things better regionally, if not locally, Democrats often shake their head, yeah, with Republicans, with some nuance there. You know, hey, don't let the horse completely out of the barn. But where do you stand on this? It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I actually agree with Senator Sawrey about, and we agree a lot. We get to work on a lot of different issues together. But when we think about how we can kind of centralize some of these services that are being required by H.R. 1 around work requirements, I think it's a good opportunity for the state to look at how can we do that differently. We are already asking the counties to do quite a bit, and they're doing more with less already. And I think this issue of property taxes, we have to enter it pretty carefully. Property taxes are the primary source of revenue for our counties, and so we can't just take it away or limit it without thinking about how we're going to replace that revenue immediately. They still have to do foster care services. They're still going to have to administer a lot of different services, and counties have to figure out how to pay for it all.
Are you buying that the admin cost, the proposed administrative costs of work requirements and all, is that a real cost, or are people using that as a political football because they might oppose work requirements for social services?
I think it's a real cost. I think whether you oppose it or you're a proponent of work requirements have a real cost. Somebody has to do that paperwork. Somebody has to double check. Somebody has to do the redeterminations. And that is all just extra work, extra time on top of a lot of services that these counties are already providing.
But is there a way they could do it better?
Yeah, I think there is a way that counties can do it better. The challenge is that we're coming up against some deadlines where we've got to put this in place. And I think it's going to take some resources to figure out how to do that better so that we can.
But Skye, we're talking about political power, and if the Senate and the House get together and go, well, you know, these county governments should relinquish power on a regional basis, said the two bodies who like to take power and keep it for themselves and will actually go to court with Josh Stein over this. Sort that for me, please.
Well, the General Assembly has all the power in North Carolina. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
So they can take away whatever they want to take away from the counties and make that determination what is or is not within their control.
And you're looking at two of them right there.
I don't know. I think we need to reframe this, though. We're not taking it away. I don't think we don't want to do it at the legislature. I think we're talking about reform to support the work that is already happening in the counties. That's what I'm going to say.
Sure. No, there's going to be an executive function that goes along with it. And I do want to go back to the cost function about this too. I mean, again, we're talking about the costs from the state level and how we make the changes to the Medicaid funding formula to pay for that. So I do think that there is a certain political element to it as to what the county, and they're linking two things that, yes, sure, there is a link there, but really the dollars are flowing through Raleigh to pay for a lot of this, not necessarily the counties.
We're here from Raleigh. We're here to help you at the local level. That's but hey, let's build on this. Legislators were given a menu of property tax reform options this week by a group called the Tax Foundation. This is a foundation, technically nonpartisan, but largely considered to be business-friendly and practical politics, center-right. Property tax elimination is one, Senator Sawrey. Lawmakers recognize local governments do need local revenue, not to mention school funding. These tax assessments could be capped somewhere at 3 to 5% annually. You could have local voters decide every property tax increase. Limiting tax increases on existing properties, but not new construction, is another option. Has anything been floated through your office, at least, that makes you go, well, let's consider it more seriously than just a group of think tankers coming up and doing a PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, I think first let's talk about the issue. Property taxes are increasing exponentially in North Carolina, and it's part of the cost equation that we talk about with healthcare, energy, income taxes, cost of groceries, cost of pharmaceutical medications. I mean, it is driving our senior citizens, our veterans, our people on fixed incomes, our lower middle income families. It's making the American dream harder, and I think that you see a recognition from the Senate and the House that we need to do something to make this problem more palatable. One thing that I think is really important is transparency with how municipal governments and county governments handle the property tax issue. So you see this circumstance where they reevaluate the property and it goes up, and they cut the rate and advertise that it went down, but it doesn't. It's actually an effective tax increase. I'm going to use the town of Selma as an example. Town of Selma, average household income under $40,000, one of the poorest communities in Johnston County. Reevaluation sent property values up. The town of Selma did not touch the tax rate. It was an effective 70% tax increase on these families that are already having a difficult time with inflation and other increased costs across North Carolina. We've got to do something. As Skye just alluded to earlier, ultimately the General Assembly can help or can make these decisions for cities and municipal governments and counties. It's clear it's being abused, and it's time for us to act and make these decisions.
Representative Crawford, if county commissioners cannot be transparent with their tax increases to the point if it raises revenue, it's a tax increase, should Raleigh step in and help them be more enlightened with tax policy?
Well, look, I don't think our county elected leaders are elected every single election. So if they're not doing something right, the people hold the power to unelect those folks and put different folks in there. We absolutely agree. We have to make sure that things are affordable for our citizens across the state. There are a lot of ways to do that. Property taxes, looking at that is certainly one. But we have to look at a whole lot of different ways to help folks achieve the American dream.
And Skye, though, towns like Selma, Smithfield, and Johnston County, parts of Wake County, they're growing, they're booming. We like our new fire trucks, we like our new fire departments, and such and so forth. Any option out there to replace what we have? I know we don't like the property tax values and all that going up, but what's better?
I don't know what's better, and I think that's why they have this committee both in the House and now a quasi-committee in the Senate. Study group in the Senate to take a look at what all of those options are and lay the options on the table so that legislators can really get together and say what is best for all of these communities across North Carolina.
Are they going to get together in Raleigh, the House and Senate eventually? Because I know one's a study group with all Republicans. One is at least bipartisan in some constitution.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question here is in a state where we've struggled to pass a budget and come to agreement over income taxes, can we come to an agreement over property taxes? There's certainly an interest, I think, in both chambers in doing something about this issue. The question is whether in this menu of options, and we've got things like caps on how much you can raise it, some tax transparency proposals, a lot of options that they could consider coming to one specific conclusion that both chambers agree on. We'll see.
From the Democrat and Republican perspective, are local voters, are they telling you that they think there's something wrong with property taxation or in the way the process has gone this last revaluation? Is it bipartisan?
What I am hearing most from property owners is just how much their property taxes have increased, and that is not, their income is not keeping up with that. And of course, as you've heard and as we know, the cost of all kinds of goods are going up, and so it's just getting harder and harder for people to pay that.
I'll say yes. I mean, I'm hearing about it daily, multiple times per day, and the challenge is that it's not necessarily like income where you can pick up and take a new job and generate more income or something like that. I mean, your house and your farm or your building is your single largest investment. You can't really do something to escape its location. You can't escape what the rate is being levied by the local government, with the exception of selling it, making a drastic lifestyle change. So yes, people are feeling it, people feel trapped, and people are crying out for us to do something in Raleigh. Johnston
County Board of Commissioners, Republican?
It's Republican, and they did, the valuation went up and they cut the rate down, but some of our local municipalities, Selma is probably the biggest example. I mean, they are the ones that did not do anything to cut the rates, and that's a problem, especially on low-income and middle-income families or people on fixed incomes.
Well, if you're not being taxed to death, folks, how about electricity bills? North Carolina's Energy Task Force says electricity demand will spike soon, and it seems power bills will increase with that demand spike. So says this task force. Duke Energy could see electricity demand rise by 60% between now and 2040. Along with these growing number of data centers. The state's power demand, I saw this in a report, only rose 7% for 20 years between 2005 and 25, so 60% in the next 15 years or so, huge. Power bills up 30% since 2017, Representative Crawford. I've often wondered, are bills really higher? Because people are complaining about the January and December bills. It was also very cold, but now it's becoming this big issue, the power bill. Is it like the drones in New Jersey, like where it just goes away one day because it was never really a thing maybe? Or what's the deal?
I don't think that the complaints about the power bill increases are going away like the drones.
Yeah. Drones vanish, you know.
Yeah, the people are complaining about their power bills. We have data on it. We are hearing from constituents on it. I do get to serve on the Energy Committee, and so we have a lot of these conversations in committee about power increases, and we talked to Duke and the other utility players about that. But yeah, I think, growth is happening in North Carolina. The demand is going up. We've got to figure out the infrastructure. We have 350 people moving into the state every single day. Data centers are taking up about 80% of the power demand, which is kind of crazy to think about, but not surprising given everything that's going on. And of course, all the advanced manufacturing that's moving in here. So growth has, it has consequences, and the consequences are we've got to figure out a system that works for everybody without just automatically passing that cost of building the infrastructure to the consumer. If the large-scale players are using more of the power, they should pay their fair share. And I think that's what we're asking. It's not about whether or not these prices are going up. It's about how we're going to distribute the cost fairly.
Colin, you travel all these small towns. We've had a state line special on data centers. In some towns, data centers, with all the juice they consume and all the water they consume, they're viewed as very positive. And in some towns, they're beating them back saying, we don't want them. Is this a simple issue of power bills, or are we going to balance being residential ratepayers against a data center coming in who we get to fund their energy needs?
I think that's the challenge, and that was one of the first recommendations out of this task force was like, how do we account for these data centers without other people subsidizing the cost, that they need to pay pretty much 100% of the cost of this initial demand that's out there because nobody wants to have that impact. Data centers can be popular in some places because, back to the property tax point, they pay a lot of property taxes. So some counties have seen, oh, look, now here's all this money to build new schools without increasing taxes on actual homeowners. So there's benefits, but there's also the worry that this is going to suck up a lot of our power, and that means you have to build a new power plant. Where do you build the new power plant, and who pays for it?
Skye, I have to say, we've had inflation since 2017 and quite a bit of it. So why would Duke take a beating over having rates higher, 30% higher today than before a very inflationary period of the U.S. economic history?
Well, it's something you see every month. And for my personal perspective, you see your phone bill, you see your energy bill, you see all of these bills, and it seems like your energy bill is going up a lot more, a lot faster than those other bills that you see every month. So it's something that's at the front of your mind. And when it goes up from 150 to 260, that's quite a jump for the average consumer.
That's not 30%, is it?
No.
That's a lot. Senator Sawrey, how do we get into the marketplace here? Sometimes when you regulate, things get more expensive. Sometimes when you deregulate, the same thing happens.
Yeah, I think we need to let the market take care of itself to an extent. I mean, not to an extent, but I think we need to let that be a guiding principle on this. We've done a good job with pursuing least cost alternatives, reliable dispatchable sources. We need to avoid some of these exploratory green energy ideas like offshore wind energy, which are extremely expensive and not right for North Carolina and Hurricane Alley. I think we, to your point about the inflationary costs, before I came on the show, I actually looked. Inflation between 2017 and today is about 32%. So the cost of energy increasing 30%. I mean, that is in line with inflation. And also looked at the Energy Information Administration's data for the South Atlantic. There are 9 states in that region. North Carolina is state number 8. There's only one state that's cheaper than us when it comes to residential power. So yes, it's more expensive. We feel it. It's painful. We need to continue doing a good job balancing that with the cost equation. You go with healthcare, taxes, cost of living. At the same time, I think we also need to recognize that we have made some major efforts in Raleigh to make sure that Duke and our other utilities pursue the least cost sources rather than expensive alternative energy ideas.
But just a couple of things. One, we've given Duke basically the same ability as the Utility Commission. You put the fox in the hen house, and I think we've got to really take a look at that and what we did. That was, I think it was 951 a few years ago. So I think we have to go back and look at that and see how that is actually being regulated. And I wanted us to be really careful about blaming clean energy, and I don't think some of these things are exploratory. We actually have a lot of good success in North Carolina with solar, for example. But even if we use fossil fuels for all of this energy, we're still going to have demand on the system. We're still not going to be able to provide everything. So we've got to look at all of our alternatives.
Isn't there only one way, though? If you build a data center that could consume as much electricity as Charlotte, North Carolina, and one plot of land, isn't it only nuclear that's the option, or am I missing something? You can't do it with solar panels.
Well, no, I don't. I mean, I think you have to have the whole energy grid has to have a balanced approach to where we're sourcing that electricity. And so it's not just nuclear, it's not just fossil fuels, it's not just solar. It's got to be an all of the above approach.
Senator, should ratepayers, the ordinary family out there, should they be worried that policy will allow electricity companies to force bills up on residents to pay for economic development?
I don't think so. I don't think we've seen a track record of that happening in North Carolina. I mean, yes, again, and I mean, all of our rates have gone up, and it's painful to every person that's a ratepayer in North Carolina. And we need to make sure that we do what we can to keep those rates down in Raleigh and not impose costly regulations to do things that aren't necessarily in the best interest of the ratepayers.
All right, the next topic. President Donald Trump came to Fort Bragg last week while we were recording the show. Not so much he was praising troops for the arrest of the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro. He addressed tensions with Iran. A lot's happened in those days. But it's the president coming to Fort Bragg that's the big deal. He invited Republican U.S. Senate candidate Michael Whatley up on the stage and saying we need to keep this area safe. We can't do that without the leaders. Your ex-governor is not one of them, those leaders, because he's raising the issue of Irina Zarutska's murder in Charlotte at Fort Bragg, Colin. And now I saw on X or Twitter that some meetings of the G20 are going to be held in Asheville. Here comes the Whatley campaign, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, they're sort of getting involved in this, and that was a little bit of a departure from what we've seen in the past from presidents going to military bases. Usually it's to go there, thank the troops for an action like Venezuela, and keep it mostly apolitical. This was kind of more of a campaign rally to the point that you saw Michael Whatley there, who's not an elected official. He's a former chairman of the Republican National Committee who's running for U.S. Senate, and Trump's message was very much to the troops that are based in North Carolina, hey, vote for this guy. Yeah. So it's definitely using the background of a military installation to kind of hold more of a campaign-style event, in addition to thanking the troops for their work.
Skye, with Michael Whatley now starting to try to build his name recognition, we know that's a polling issue with Donald Trump now at Fort Bragg. Good call for the week, and then as we head into the G20, maybe was it later this summer, in Asheville, puts Helene back in the spotlight. This Senate race is going to be hot.
Yeah, it's going to be, and Whatley needs the name recognition, so he needs to show up places with President Trump, because I think just the average voter doesn't really know who he is. Us on the inside might know, oh, he led the GOP, but the average Republican voter has no idea who he is, and so he's got to be getting out there a little bit more. And I think the Helene thing will definitely draw attention, whether it's good or bad.
What do you think of going to Asheville and setting up? Because there's two ways to pitch. Helene recovery, I would say at a local level, I've heard that the state has done a really good job with what it's been able to invest.
Yes.
Federal issues, there's lawsuits. Jeff Jackson's out there. Parse that particular choice that Asheville will be front and center here soon.
I don't know if Asheville, I think I agree. This should be front and center. I agree. Whatley needs the name recognition. I mean, all of this is so interesting to me. And Republicans are in trouble. I mean, Republicans across the country are in trouble. We're seeing that left and right. So I'm not surprised that, that President Trump and Michael Whatley are trying to pull out all the stops and make all of this happen.
There was all the stops, Senator.
Yeah. Look,
very nice.
Michael Whatley's in a great spot. He has a canvas. He can tell his story. He can introduce himself to the voters. Governor Cooper has nearly 100% name ID in the state of North Carolina, and he can barely crack 47% in any of the polls. This is going to be a billion-dollar race where Whatley and the Republicans are going to have a chance to really define his record, tell the voters things they might not be aware of. I think the Republicans in North Carolina with the U.S. Senate race are in better position than people are giving credit for.
We're going to see Barack Obama now come to add that presidential timber to the
we got a long way till
side.
November, and we're going to see a lot of celebrity visits, a lot of really well-known politicians coming to town on both sides of the aisle.
All right, I got a couple minutes left. National Democrats and Republicans say they've reached a deal to preserve 73,000 voter registrations that have faced removals for irregularities. The Republican National Committee says it will drop its federal lawsuit against the State Board of Elections to remove those voters as long as state officials continue their efforts to correct incomplete voter registrations, which the board is apparently doing. Some voter registrations were missing information like partial Social Security numbers or driver's license numbers. Very quickly, Skye, that's starting to clear up, this idea of this confusion around our elections.
Yeah, I took a look at this settlement document, and it looks like because the State Board of Elections last year, when it was taken over by Republicans, began the steps to correct this. They sent things out to voters, said these are the ways that you can correct. They're on a path to getting people back on the rolls without blanket removing thousands of people off the rolls.
Is this a partisan move, Representative Crawford, or just good governance where you are cleaning up voter rolls, making sure every registration is correct?
I mean, I think, first of all, this is a win. This is a win for democracy. Election integrity is not about kicking people, eligible, legal voters, legally registered, off the rolls. You know, I do think that this is good work to make sure that forms are corrected, information is validated. We certainly don't want anybody who shouldn't be voting in elections. That is not what this is. This is fixing, you know, however old these forms are, and voters should not be punished just because a form is missing a few numbers. And we need to correct that, and we're doing both.
20 seconds. It's cleaning up the rolls. I mean, is this issue going to start fading, or are we just going to revamp it later this fall?
People want confidence in their elections, and the forms and registration documents are incomplete or inaccurate. I mean, the state board's doing exactly what it should be doing in reaching out to voters and fixing this. I mean, again, when people have confidence in their elections, they have confidence in the results, and that's good for North Carolina. It's good for democracy.
Colin, last 30 seconds. What do you think of this issue? I mean, is it whack-a-mole? Something else will pop up when they get this fixed?
I mean, there may be other issues that come up. This is sort of the conclusion of the whole Supreme Court race saga that involved a lot of these votes. Now they seem to be becoming corrected, but it remains to be seen if there'll be a few people who don't quite get the memo to fix those forms.
And that's our show for this week. Thank you, Skye.
Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you, Colin. More importantly, thank you for watching State Lines every week. We care about what you think. We have an email address, statelines@pbsnc.org. Send me your thoughts and your analysis. I'll read every email. I'm Kelly McCullen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Funding for State Lines is made possible in part by
Across North Carolina, strong communities begin at home. The North Carolina Realtors represent more than 55,000 professionals statewide, focused on expanding housing attainability for all.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting PBS NC.